Hey everyone, and welcome back to a new video. It's time, I finally review my first game now on the new Byte. If you would rather like to see a written review, of course, that is also on the website, a link in the video description down below. But for now, let's talk about Dragon Ball FighterZ. And my personal experience actually goes back to Gamescom 2017, last year in August, and that was the first time that I actually played Dragon Ball FighterZ. I didn't fully understand it, I didn't have much time to take a look into controls, but I was immediately hooked by the gameplay. Then I let you join also the closed beta and the open beta phases when they were happening. And now finally it is here, fully released, and I gotta say, it was worth the time waiting. While I will do an article about the pre-order bonuses and in-game transactions that we have, yes, we have microtransactions and loot boxes, but they're not that bad, I'd say. At least I think they're not that bad. The actually in-game loot boxes are just capsules, and the capsules can also be bought with in-game currency. So there's that. Just wait for my next article on thenewbyte.com. But if we talk about the game, of course, we have to talk first about how the game plays and how it's actually set up. So, Dragon Ball FighterZ actually is a tag brawler game. Just like, for example, Tekken Tag Tournament had 2 players, and now the upcoming, also being developed by Arc System Works, Blaze Blue Cross Tag, which has also 2 players in the tag team. We have in Dragon Ball FighterZ also a tag team, but here we have actually 3 fighters together in the match. And these 3-man tag battles are actually really exciting. And this is sort of the central of the review right now, because the gameplay is fantastic and just have to go into detail how that works. The story, I will talk in just a second about it. It's not that great, but well, you'll see when we reach that point in the review. For now, how does fighting actually work? It's more for the general audience who does not know how the game plays. Well, in general, we can say on the controller we have, of course, different combinations with the arrow keys or arrow buttons, and of course the action buttons. I talk, of course, about the PlayStation 4 reviews, so I will use those buttons, but they are, of course, matching also on the PC and on the Xbox. So, with square, you actually have the light attack, triangle is the medium attack, and of course the circle attack is the heavy attack, sort of. Heavy attacks especially are very nice in order to attack someone and push them away from you. And if you finish off a fight with a heavy attack, you can even hit them against a building or a giant mountain, which looks really cool in fights, of course. It would not be a Dragon Ball game if there wasn't also some interesting sort of magic happening with ki and energy blasts, and that is of course used by the X key, and especially that is a combination with different arrow keys where you can say, hey, let's have some Kamehameha happening, of course, and you do that just by, of course, using your key meter, which is on the bottom of the screen, and you need to power it up in order to, being able to use those massive attacks. So with different combinations of attacks that you can use, which is sort of normal brawling, you will unlock later on your powers, which you can use then to unleash special moves. And of course, each of the characters have their very own special moves. Funny enough, most of the game's things are actually tied down to what Dragon Ball Z offers, actually. And while I find that a little bit disappointing, there of course are also things from the Dragon Ball Super Story saga, so yeah, we'll talk about the differences in just a second. So having, of course, a very clear laid out system and a good tutorial which will take you through different steps and give you enough time to just play around in between those tutorial chapters, you will actually get to know the game very fast. And using the story mode, of course, to exercise and having slowly increasing difficulty with the AI, it helps you a lot, of course, to get to know the game. Now the tag battle actually is what makes this game so interesting. With L1 you can, for example, just call in another team member and have him just sort of bash out an attack. Depending on who it is, for example, Goku does his short Kamehameha. It helps a lot, of course, to either just knock someone off, kill them even. I managed to kill the final boss of the story arc with Android 17, funny enough. or you'll use that momentum in order to switch out your characters and have the last current one, of course, go back into the backside and have it heal up a little bit. So managing your character's health, of course, is very important over the long time a match takes place, but one by one you take out each of his characters until only one is still standing, or at least none of the other teams that are standing, and then you won the match. Fantastic. Now what Dragon Ball FighterZ actually does really well is making you feel powerful, and that is something that I was actually missing from a lot of games lately, where you sort of have a chance of having the power fantasy. Yes, the moments where you take your time to prepare an attack sometimes take a little longer, and filling your ki gauge of course can be done by just using the powering up move, but sadly that doesn't happen that often that your enemy gives you enough time to do so. So you'd think that you would need, of course, a long chain of attacks until you have enough ki together in order to unleash a super special move, but that's actually where you're wrong. You only need one ki bar of 7 possible, 7 is the maximum there, in order to unleash a special move. And you need 3 ki bars to have a sort of meteor attack, which is sort of the final attack. For example, for young Gohan, that's the Kamehameha he did against Cell. And even those can even be extended with additional use of ki if you have it already, in order to push even further beyond that and deal even more damage. And that is exactly what I like to call the power fantasy thing in Dragon Ball FighterZ, which is just executed so damn well. So having a great fighting system and of course a good feeling when playing and fantastic looks. There are also another cool thing in Dragon Ball FighterZ, and that is what I call, of course, the lore elements. Within Dragon Ball FighterZ you also have the chance to unlock certain endings between fights. For example, if you hit with a certain combination an enemy in the right stage, for example Goku versus Beerus in space, you will get not just the normal ending sequence, you will actually get a little cutscene which will replay sort of the moments from the anime. Most of these moments come from Dragon Ball Z, of course, because hey, most of the characters were happening there, and then the other stuff in Dragon Ball Super, while the game was being developed, wasn't that far developed right now. Dragon Ball FighterZ actually is set, according to the story mode, just in between the Resurrection F movie and shortly before the Zamasu storyline. So there's nothing happening with the Tournament of Power, but at least you have Vegeta and Goku already in Super Saiyan Blue or Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan form, and that is really nice. Actually, those figures are sort of pre-order bonuses, and this is where we'll talk about them shortly, but you can also unlock them in the game. So you either pay up, I think, 3 euros for the fighters, 2 euros for the avatar versions of the Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan versions of Goku and Vegeta, or you just play a lot. You either gather or not Zenny, which is of course the currency in the world of Dragon Ball and also in the game, or you actually unlock them while you're beating the arcade mode in the hardest difficulties. So yeah, you have lots of chances actually to get those fighters as well, so they're not just locked behind pre-order walls and not pre-order exclusive, which is something I really respect from Arc System Works. Again, it's another strange thing because actually with their own incoming game, Blast Blue Cross Tag again, they'll have 20 fighters and additionally 20 DLC fighters already before release. It's kind of strange how that is locked behind DLC walls. But at least here in Dragon Ball FighterZ, which was published by Bandai Namco, maybe that is the reason, because Blast Blue will be published also by Arc System Works, so they sort of have the freedom. Nothing is in that here in Dragon Ball FighterZ. Yes, they're upgrades, but they're only cosmetics, like avatars for the lobby system and different stamps, but nothing substantial, nothing that changes the gameplay overall. The story in itself also can unlock another fighter, and that is Android 21. So the story mode actually introduces Android 21 as just a scientist person, but later on it also gets revealed there's a sort of a dark side to Android 21. And that is because she is sort of a continuation of Cell. Cell collected, of course, cells from all the fighters, and this mixture of Goku, Vegeta, the Saiyans, and of course Piccolo, for example. So lots of those things mixture in Cell. And Android 21 continues that after the Cell saga. So of course Boo is also included now in that sort of gene pool, and that makes her really hungry. In case you don't know, Majin Buu was a character who just simply ate and turned enemies into food and then collected them and ate them, and that power also got transferred to Buu then. And the same thing happens now with Android 21. And throughout the story we have 3 different story arcs. We have the sort of hero arc, the villain arc, and the arc that is described as the android arc. The first 2 actually just show the standards. You're suddenly suppressed by some waves that the Red Ribbon Army is using, and you have to slowly get back into your form. And you do that by getting access through your soul. And the funny is, you are the soul. Yes, all of a sudden there are souls linked together in the Dragon Ball FighterZ, and you are controlling them. And that's actually a nice way to see how the story actually picks up that these people there actually have their own mind, but they're controlled by us. And in that story, we are sort of a foreign soul linked to these fighters now, and we help them to unlock their powers, although they're currently suppressed by those radio waves. In the meantime, Android 21 also revived all the Eagle people, and that story arc also focuses probably on the same thing as the heroes, so they both converge down to Android 21 is evil, she eats everyone, and we have to fight them. Only that in the hero version, of course, the villains also get eaten, so Android 21 is sort of stronger in that arc, but nonetheless, of course, the level progression, which is also there, will just get stronger and stronger continuing. So the hero arc is the first arc, then the villains, then the android saga arc. It's continuing to be more difficult and difficult, but it's never really unfair. Only the final fight of the final arc, that was really difficult. So yeah, the story actually is not that great. The problem is how the story is happening. It's not just fight, cutscene. It's actually a sort of board game, which is quite interesting. On the board game you have a grid laid out with different nodes, and on some nodes there are enemies. Sometimes they get switched out by Majin Buu, who gives extra experience, and you continue on to just fight sort of the boss fight of each board. And with the experience points, yes, there's also a sort of RPG effect in that. So your fighters, as I explained, are suppressed by radio waves, and by fighting more you gather more experience and you level up. Each level basically just gives you more health to work with, and the enemies of course are also increasing in their levels. While on your way, of course, you will also have, interesting enough, a mod system. They're called seals in the game, but I call them mods because they change actually how you will fight inside of these story modes. This is exclusive to the story mode only. There are also ranked matches and casual world matches in the online multiplayer part in the lobby you're playing, and of course also local multiplayer. But you know, for a review standpoint, I can just say they're there, but they're not that interesting to talk about. So yeah, that system is good, that's also there. But in the story mode there's actually more happening than that, so that's why I focus on that mainly right now. Well, I think that's actually a good thing to have in a story mode, sort of as a gameplay part, a cool progression system, a nice addition to what you can do, and it helps of course also to unlock more Zenny in order to buy more stuff if you want for the cosmetic items. It's sort of lame how that happens, because sometimes chapters and boards are just repeating itself. You unlock new fighters for your rosters, but how that happens is just say, oh, someone's in danger, we gotta save them. We save them. Oh, you saved me, thanks. You repeat the story again, which is of course skipped, and everyone is there and just saying, okay, let's fight them. And that happens so often that I think, okay, I just skip the cutscene and press XXX all the time, so I can just finish on and do more fights. So that's actually what I don't like about the story so much. Overall, I could always forgive Dragon Ball FighterZ for that, because again, looking back at the beginning of the game, gameplay is superb. The power fantasy that you will get from this is fantastic, and especially as a fan of Dragon Ball, it's really nice to see all those moments, especially if you are actually able to trigger one of those dramatic finishes. Oh my god, it's just so cool to see. And I personally am a fan of those 2D fighting games. I know some people who want to have 3D fighting games. But yeah, what Arc System Works here has is actually harmonizing with Dragon Ball overall, I think, and the roster in itself is also quite big already. The story mode actually limits your roster depending on what arc you play, and something from the Super Sagas, of course, not in there. There's a partial explanation for that. Goku Black is one of the regular roster people, but of course in the story arc he hasn't happened yet, so he is not part of the story. And Lord Beerus and Whis are actually shortly there just to explain, well, we have nothing to do with this, we're out. So yeah, that means there's at least a logical reason why your roster in the story mode is limited to only specific people, the heroes and the villains, and of course the androids later on, and why not the complete roster is there. Makes sense, works for me, I'm fine with that. So, as a conclusion, Dragon Ball FighterZ, is it for everyone? I don't know. It's a very good game, it's easy to get in, but it's also very hard to master. I'm personally a fighter who's too offensive, so I should rather learn how to block at times, but I also had very nice online matches already. Some which started out like I'm totally inferior to my opponent. He says, okay, but still I do a rematch, we do a rematch, and all of a sudden I'm on top and I win. It's 1 versus 1. And then we see in the third match who's actually the best, and mostly I lose. But nevertheless, it's really good fun. It works very well. I didn't have that many disconnects, actually only one over the course of the game so far. The lobby system also works when the servers are offline, so that's great. You can still do the card mode and of course the story mode and exercises. And from what I can see, the community is also very alive and well, and there are lots of cool tutorials, of course, even explaining more how fighting works, laying out strategies, explaining fighters. Even people like Krillin and Yamcha are really good in that game, so nobody feels like they're weak or something. Everyone has their aspects to them, and to get to know them and of course to learn how to react to those other fighters that you're not playing yourself is still a really good key part in having a good winning chance. So overall, yeah, it is good. If there would be a Dragon Ball FighterZ 2 like that, I would hope that a few things were different, like for example in the arcade mode, if I start to fail and not get the best ranking that I want to achieve for overall, I just want to say restart arcade mode and I just go back again, but instead I have to go back to the lobby and load it up completely. That's a little lame. Also, I would hope that the story the next time is a little better, although again, I have to say, it's not a repetition of the anime story arcs, it's a completely new one, and for what they did, it's good. It's good. I mean, we don't play necessarily Dragon Ball FighterZ for the story, but the story that's there is good enough to be acceptable. So yeah, I totally recommend buying that game, at least on PlayStation 4 where I played it. I had some problems with the Xbox One open beta to get it to work. I don't know what the situation is right now there, so you might want to check online what other people are saying for the platform that you're interested in, if it really works. Same goes, of course, for the Steam community. So that's it again. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you will join us, of course, on thenewbyte.com. Our socials are linked down below, and of course you can subscribe right here. Watch the video that YouTube recommends to you, and of course watch our latest episode of the podcast. I'm not just one person here on the New Byte, we're actually multiple people, and I hope you will give those people also a chance. Again, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!